March 15, 1945, outskirts of Bastogne, Belgium. The morning mist clung to the Ardennes forest like a shroud, masking the rumble that would soon shake the earth beneath Private Tommy Henderson's boots. At 19, the farm boy from Iowa had been in Europe for exactly 47 days. His hands, still soft from milking cows just months before, now gripped a bazooka that felt heavier than any hay bale he'd ever lifted. Colonel James Morrison crouched behind the stone wall of a bombed farmhouse, his weathered face scanning the tree line through field glasses. The intelligence reports had been clear. A lone Tiger II tank, weighing 68 tons of German engineering fury, was advancing toward their position. What the reports hadn't mentioned was the desperation in the enemy's movements. This wasn't a coordinated assault, but the death throes of a retreating army. "Henderson." Morrison's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "You see that ridge at 2 o'clock? 800 meters out?" Tommy's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. 800 meters. In training, they'd practiced at half that distance. The M9A1 bazooka in his hands had an effective range of 150 meters against armor. Beyond that, the 2.36-inch rocket became little more than an expensive firework. The ground trembled. Then again, the rhythmic pounding grew stronger, like the heartbeat of some mechanical beast awakening from slumber. Through the mist, a shadow emerged, angular, massive, unstoppable. The Tiger II's 88mm gun barrel swept left and right, a predator's head searching for prey. Marie Dubois pressed her 6-year-old daughter closer to her chest in the farmhouse cellar. The Belgian widow had survived 4 years of occupation, rationing her family's meager supplies while Allied and German forces traded control of her village 7 times. Now, as the walls above her head shuddered with each impact of the approaching tank, she whispered prayers in French that her daughter would see another sunrise. The Tiger II emerged fully from the mist like a steel leviathan. Its Maybach HL-230 engine roared with 700 horsepower, propelling the behemoth forward at 25 kilometers per hour. The tank's frontal armor, 180 millimeters thick, had never been penetrated by Allied weapons in combat. Its commander, Oberleutnant Klaus Weber, had survived the Eastern Front, Normandy, and the Bulge. This morning, he was leading his crew home, or to their graves. "Range! 700 meters and closing!" Sergeant Martinez called out, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The Mexican-American from El Paso had seen action in Sicily and Normandy. He knew the mathematics of war. Their 57mm anti-tank gun could penetrate the Tiger's side armor at 500 meters, but only if they could get a clean shot. The frontal assault they were witnessing was suicide. Tommy's breathing came in short bursts. The bazooka's sight wavered as he tried to track the massive target. His instructor's words echoed in his memory. "Lead your target, son. Think of it like shooting ducks, but these ducks shoot back." The Tiger's main gun swiveled toward their position. Weber had spotted the muzzle flash from their 57mm gun's previous shot, a miss that had sailed harmlessly over the tank's turret. Through his periscope, the German officer could see the American position clearly. One shot from his 80mm KW-43 gun would end this engagement decisively. What nobody knew was that Tommy Henderson had been lying about his marksmanship scores since basic training. Back in Iowa, Tommy had been the worst shot in his family. While his brothers brought home deer and pheasants, Tommy couldn't hit the broadside of their barn from 20 paces. His father had shaken his head in disappointment more times than the boy could count. "Son," the old farmer had said, "you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat." But desperation has a way of sharpening focus. The Tiger II was now 600 meters away. Its engine noise had become a mechanical symphony of destruction. Pistons firing, tracks grinding against steel road wheels, the whine of the transmission shifting gears. The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with cordite from previous engagements hung heavy in the air. Colonel Morrison made a decision that would haunt him for decades. Henderson, take the shot. Sir, I can't. Take the damn shot, soldier. Tommy's world narrowed to the circle of his sight. The tiger filled his vision, growing larger with each second. He could see the tank commander's head protruding from the cupola, could make out the individual links of the track system, could count the spare road wheels mounted on the turret sides. Weber's finger moved to the firing button. The 80mm gun was loaded with a Panzergranate 3943 armor-piercing shell, capable of penetrating 165mm of steel at 1,000 meters. At this range, it would punch through their defensive position like tissue paper. In the cellar below, Marie Dubois felt the house shake as the tiger's tracks crushed the stone fence that had marked her property line for 3 generations. Her husband had built that fence with his own hands in 1938, 2 years before the Germans first came. Now it was rubble beneath 68 tons of advancing steel. Tommy's finger found the trigger. The bazooka's 2.36-inch rocket motor ignited with a whoosh that sent a backblast of superheated gas streaming behind him. The projectile streaked across the battlefield at 265 feet per second, trailing white smoke like a comet's tail. The rocket should have missed. Every calculation, every probability, every law of physics suggested it would sail harmlessly past the tiger's massive bulk. Tommy had aimed too high, compensating for a drop that wouldn't occur at this range. The projectile arced through the morning air, following a trajectory that defied logic. But war is chaos, and chaos sometimes favors the desperate. The rocket struck the Tiger II's commander's cupola at the exact moment Weber was traversing the turret. The impact point, a junction where the cupola's armor was thinnest, just 25 millimeters thick, had been exposed for exactly 1.3 seconds as the turret rotated. The shaped charge warhead detonated, sending a jet of molten copper through the armor at 8,000 meters per second. Weber died instantly. The copper jet severed his spinal cord before he could process what had happened. His body slumped forward onto the turret controls, jamming the traverse mechanism. The Tiger II, suddenly blind and unable to rotate its main gun, became a 68-ton paperweight. The German crew, trained to operate as a single organism, fell apart without their commander's voice. The driver, Unteroffizier Hans Müller, couldn't see the battlefield from his position. The gunner, Obergefreiter Fritz Hoffmann, found himself staring at a target he couldn't engage with a gun that wouldn't move. The loader, 17-year-old Kurt Schneider, began to panic. "Kommandant ist tot!" Schneider screamed into the intercom. "The commander is dead!" Muller made the decision to reverse course. The Tiger's transmission whined as he shifted into reverse, but the massive tank had been designed for forward assault, not retreat. Its reverse speed, a mere 12 kilometers per hour, made it a sitting duck for the American anti-tank gun that was already adjusting its aim. Sergeant Martinez didn't waste the opportunity. His second shot from the 57mm gun struck the Tiger's rear armor at 400 meters, penetrating the engine compartment. The Maybach engine seized with a grinding shriek of metal on metal. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the engine bay, followed by the acrid smell of burning oil. The Tiger II ground to a halt, smoke pouring from its rear deck. Muller and his surviving crew abandoned the tank, disappearing into the forest as American infantry moved forward to secure the position. Tommy Henderson stared at the smoking hulk in disbelief. His hand shook as he lowered the empty bazooka tube. Around him, his squad mates erupted in cheers, slapping his back and shouting congratulations he couldn't hear over the ringing in his ears. Colonel Morrison approached the young private, his expression unreadable. "Henderson, that was either the luckiest shot in military history or the finest piece of marksmanship I've ever witnessed." Tommy looked up at his commanding officer, his voice barely a whisper. "Sir, I was aiming for the tracks." The tactical implications of Tommy's impossible shot rippled across the battlefield like stones thrown into still water. The Tiger II's destruction had cost the German army approximately 800,000 Reichsmarks. equivalent to $3.2 million in today's currency. More importantly, it had eliminated the last heavy tank in the sector, allowing Allied forces to advance 12 kilometers in the following 24 hours. Before Tommy's shot, German forces controlled a defensive line stretching 8 kilometers, anchored by the Tiger II's presence. After the tank's destruction, Allied forces captured 847 German prisoners and secured 3 strategic crossroads, accelerating the war's end in the region by an estimated 6 days. The human cost was equally significant. Weber's death left his crew leaderless and demoralized. Of the 4 surviving crew members, 3 would surrender within the week. Only Müller would make it back to German lines, carrying news of the Tiger's loss that would contribute to the decision to abandon the entire defensive sector. Marie Dubois emerged from her cellar that evening to find American soldiers sharing their rations with her daughter. The chocolate bar that Sergeant Martinez gave to little Claudette was the first candy the child had tasted in 2 years. Marie would later write in her diary, "Today, a boy from America saved our lives with a shot that should have missed. Perhaps God guides the bullets of the righteous." Tommy Henderson returned to Iowa after the war, where he took over his father's farm and never spoke of his military service. He married his high school sweetheart, raised 4 children, and lived to see his great-grandchildren. The bazooka that fired the impossible shot was donated to the Smithsonian Institution, where it remains on display with a placard that reads simply, "Used in combat, Belgium, 1945. The Tiger II tank, designated number 332, was eventually recovered by Allied forces and shipped to Aberdeen Proving Ground for analysis. Engineers studying the wreckage confirmed what battlefield reports had suggested. The penetration point was so precise, so unlikely, that it could only have been achieved by extraordinary luck or divine intervention. Weber's personal effects, found in the tank's commander's position, included a letter to his wife that he had been writing when Tommy's rocket ended his war. The unfinished letter, stained with hydraulic fluid and blood, contained a single prophetic line. "Mein Liebste Anna, I fear this war will end not with grand battles, but with small moments that change everything." The psychological impact on both armies was immediate and profound. American morale soared as word of the Iowa farm boy who killed a tiger with 1 shot spread through the ranks. German forces, already demoralized by months of retreat, saw the loss of their most powerful tank to a single infantryman as an omen of inevitable defeat. Military historians would later debate the tactical significance of the engagement. Some argued that the Tiger II's destruction was merely symbolic, 1 tank among thousands lost in the war's final months. Others contended that the psychological victory was worth far more than the tactical gain, demonstrating that even Germany's most advanced weapons could be defeated by ordinary soldiers with extraordinary courage. The truth, as Tommy Henderson knew, was simpler and more complex than either interpretation. War is not won by superior technology or grand strategy alone, but by individual moments of human decision under impossible pressure. Sometimes those decisions are made by generals in comfortable headquarters. Sometimes they are made by 19-year-old farm boys who can't hit the broadside of a barn. The morning after the engagement, Allied intelligence officers interviewed Tommy extensively, trying to understand how he had achieved such an improbable shot. Their reports, classified for 30 years, revealed a pattern that military psychologists would later study extensively. Soldiers who performed extraordinary feats under combat stress often had no clear memory of their actions. "I just pointed and pulled the trigger," Tommy told the intelligence officers. "I didn't think about angles or armor thickness or any of that technical stuff they taught us. I just saw this big metal thing coming to kill my friends, and I wanted to stop it." The bazooka round that Tommy fired had been manufactured at the Chrysler Corporation's Detroit arsenal in February 1945. Quality control records show it was part of batch number 7439, produced by workers who were predominantly women filling roles left vacant by men serving overseas. The irony was not lost on military historians. A weapon built by American women had been fired by an American farm boy to destroy a tank crewed by German fathers and sons, all of whom simply wanted to go home. The ripple effects of that single shot continued long after the war ended. The tactical lessons learned from the engagement influenced American anti-tank doctrine for decades. The psychological impact on surviving German tank crews led to increased surrender rates in the war's final weeks. Most significantly, the story of Tommy Henderson became part of American military folklore, told and retold in training camps and barracks around the world. But perhaps the most profound impact was on Tommy himself. The boy who couldn't hit a barn door had, in one impossible moment, changed the course of a battle, saved countless lives, and helped end a war. The weight of that responsibility would follow him for the rest of his life. Years later, when reporters tracked him down on his Iowa farm, Tommy would only say, "I did what any soldier would do. I tried to protect my friends." When pressed for details about the shot that made him famous, he would change the subject to the weather or the price of corn. The last surviving member of Tommy's squad, Sergeant Martinez, offered perhaps the most insightful perspective on the engagement. In a 1995 interview, 50 years after the battle, he said, "People want to make Tommy into some kind of hero, but that misses the point. We were all heroes that day, and we were all terrified. The difference was that Tommy's terror made him lucky, and his luck saved our lives." The Tiger II that Tommy destroyed was one of only 489 ever produced. Each tank required 300,000 man-hours to build and consumed enough steel to construct 3 Sherman tanks. The German war economy, already stretched beyond breaking point, could not afford such losses. Every Tiger destroyed brought the war's end one step closer. In the broader context of World War II, the engagement at Bastogne was a footnote, one small action among millions. But for the men who fought there, for Marie Dubois and her daughter, for the German crew who survived, it was the entire war condensed into a few minutes of terror and triumph. The lesson of Tommy Henderson's impossible shot transcends military history. In moments of crisis, ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things, not because they are heroes, but because they are human beings who refuse to surrender to despair. Sometimes the most important battles are won not by the strongest or the smartest, but by those who simply refuse to give up when everything seems hopeless.